Is it possible that the most insightful thing that's ever been said about the clarinet came from one of the world's great jazz flute players? Yes! I don't know if anybody on this channel is much of a jazz fan. I happen to be, and one of the great jazz players who played with Count Basie for a long time and was renowned for playing with just about everybody in the entire world. He died in 2013. His name is Frank West. Great saxophone player, great flute player. He said something about the clarinet because my understanding is he did not feel he was a very good clarinet player. Never heard him play the clarinet. I can't take a position on that. But what I can tell you is he didn't feel so comfortable because he said something that gets repeated over and over and over and over in the Broadway community specifically. And it's hilarious, and I think that's why it gets repeated. Jazz players of the time used the word cats to reference people. The clarinet was invented by 5 different cats. These cats lived in 5 different cities. And they didn't know each other, and they didn't care. Oftentimes, this line gets delivered with a fair amount of sass and accent and inflection. I'm not comfortable doing any of those, so I hired an actress to recite the lines in a way that I think pretty much nails it.
The clarinet was invented by 5 cats who didn't live in the same town, who never talked to each other.
So here's the thing. Frank West is making a joke. But is it a joke? No. The clarinet wasn't invented by one person on one day, or one person on many days, or one person at all. We can even tell in the way that the clarinet has become a thing in the world. The German people play a German clarinet, the French people play a French clarinet, the British people play a British clarinet, and in America we generally play a French clarinet. There's a certain number of jazz players who use an Albert system, which is based on the German system, but probably not the people watching this channel, but there's one that does. And it warms my heart that he ever comes here. The clarinet has a lot of different versions. It couldn't have been invented by one person because there's too many different versions of the clarinet. Here's what they all share. Basically, one bore that's the same size from beginning to end. One end with the reed and one end that's open. That means it's got some screwy, and that's a technical term, some screwy acoustical properties. We have 3 entirely separate sounding and feeling registers. I suppose every instrument has some version of that, but here is ours. I'm going to put a picture of the instrument that bears the name of our low register, the Chalumeau. I've never heard one of these instruments played. There's the simple ones, and then they've added keys on some of them. And that's also something we're going to get into for just a second. But anyway, the low register of our instrument is the Chalumeau register. That goes from low E up to B flat. Great, that takes us up from our lowest finger. I started on a low E, if that tripped your ears out. Started on a low E, play up the F major scale, up to B flat. That takes us right to the top level of our Chalumeau range. The clarion range. The clarion, I believe, is actually a trumpet. I think there is an instrument called the clarion, or referenced in some ways as a clarion, and it's a trumpet. The clarion, that's where we get our name. We're right in our wheelhouse here in the clarion register, which are the same fingerings, but with the register key on. I switched into C major there. Right, okay, so we're up at high C, just our thumb. The next note is C sharp. And what do we do for C sharp? We pick up our first finger. That gives us our second register key. Frank West was dialed into what makes this so messed up. Right, okay, so who invented this? So in any case, we go with one register key, and then all of a sudden this first finger is another register key. I'll show you about that in a second. So I'm going to go just chromatically up to high G. Those are our altissimo notes. So we've got Chalumeau, clarion, altissimo, and then we probably have some version of a super altissimo or something like that. And I say that because the fingerings repeat themselves again in some way. But we're going to just go over the most practical version of this because most of us are not playing above a high G too often. You know, I know there's a famous excerpt that goes up to high D. Beyond that, I'm not playing those notes. Certainly not for fun. So let's just play a scale. I'm going to play an F major scale from low E, which is a weird place to start, up to high C, super high C. High C is a little flat. Excuse me. So you get the idea. We've got our 3 different registers. But what can we learn from this? Why does this matter? Let me tell you, because it does. We can actually get something really cool from this in terms of resetting how we go about considering our clarinet sound. And here it is. Our first notes are always, when we learn to play, Chalumeau notes. They're Chalumeau notes because we don't have an embouchure to form. Or we have one, we just haven't formed it yet. We don't know what it is, we don't know how to do it. And so the first note we generally play is an E. But you know what? That E doesn't sound like that. I actually can't make that E sound like it did in the beginning because I'm not playing the number 2 reed. I'm not playing student mouthpiece on a student horn. I can't make it sound exactly like it, but it probably sounded something like this. Super loose embouchure, but we get the sound out. And we learn to play a bunch of notes. And that is it's a totally fantastic way to start. And that's actually where I would say most clarinet players ever get before they decide they want to play basketball or tennis or not play the clarinet. And that's also a totally adequate choice. No shade. But for those of us that continue, what that does is it sets us up very unconsciously with the idea of that's how the clarinet is to be played. Then when we move to the clarion register, the way I teach it, we go from low C, and then we press the register key, and we go up to G. But it should just come right out. And that gets us into the clarion register. But here's the thing. Here's how I want you to think about it. The Chalumeau register can be, should not be, but can be played with almost no, as long as a sound comes out, that note is going to basically come out. Let's test this on our E. There's a decent E. I'm going to voice as low as possible. Let's see what happens. I mean, I'm barely forming an embouchure. Still an E. Not a good E, not in tune, not usable, but still an E. But let's see, if I pinch it as hard as I can, let's say I try and play a high note. I can make it go a little sharp, but it's still essentially an E. Right? I can't really alter this note up. I can unfocus the sound and make it go down, but I still get the note. That's the only register in which that's true. Let's look at our clarion register. I'm going to use that same fingering, 2 fingers. We'll be playing a high B. Cool, let's check it out. Let's say I use a variation of that embouchure that I used, the loose embouchure it was bottomless. I don't get anything. So this note needs to be voiced within the spectrum of where it can be, way higher. That is something that we need to do to get that note to come out. Okay, but here's the tricky thing with the clarion notes, and this is why they're so important to us, is that if I voice that too high, I actually will get a note that is significantly too high. So I've got to hit that note right in the center, because I can miss high and I can miss low on the partials. So this is where our clarinet, the clarion register, really shows us the middle way, the middle path to getting control and ability on our instruments. Our Chalumeau register should be considered based off of the clarion register. Let me show you what I mean. We're going to go back down to low C, 3 fingers. And then I'm going to press the register key like I did before. And then I'm going to let it go. I've got a whole video about this. I'll link it at the end. And I let that register key go. I should remain with a high G. So it'll go C to G and then stay on a G. That means everything is as it's supposed to be. But here's the thing. When I play my low C, I'm pretty much set to do that. There's some weird, I wouldn't call it magical, but it is a strange thing to think about, which is that when I play my low C, I'm pretty much playing the high G with the register key. Like the setting in my mouth and in my voicing is the same. Should not drop back down. So then, when we go back to try and play that low C, it'll be right there, it'll be focused, it'll be in tune, it'll be where we want it. So these registers are becoming integrated in that way. Now let's talk about going up to the altissimo register. We're going to stay on that C that turns into a G, that when we let go of our second register key, our first finger, it's going to go up to an E. And that is why we're doing this, right? To make sure that this voicing that we're using gets us to the next register the way that we want it to. Now, what happens if I put this finger down? Should it stay a high E? Yes. I'm moving my finger a lot just to show everybody I wouldn't do that in real life. Let me do it the way I should do it. It's a flat E, but it stays an E. So this is how we go from our clarion and consider how to make that into our shallow, and take our clarion and make that into our altissimo. Have that idea when you're playing that the center of the clarinet is the clarion register. It's going to really enable you to control all of this if you're a player who doesn't want to play with a focus sound, who wants to play with something different. If you're a jazz player that wants to do a completely different style of music where this is not relevant and this doesn't matter, cool. Learn to do it anyway. And that's going to give you the control to choose not to do it. And that's a much different way about not doing it than the actual simply just not doing it. When you are able to and choose not to, it's significantly different. And that's it. So thank you, Mr. Frank West, for saying something funny that allowed us some insight into the clarinet today. I've got the other videos that I've referenced, overtone videos. Check it out if you're still here. Like and subscribe if you're still here, would you? All right. We'll see you next time.